Nebraska lawmakers open the door to livestock expansion. On this episode of Grow, we'll learn about a proposal creating an appeals process for livestock operations denied at the local level. And when is a record harvest a mixed blessing? We'll look at the final crop numbers for 2014. And we travel to McCook to meet a young man with a successful business thanks to FFA. Grow starts now. Nebraska is poised for livestock expansion. Now lawmakers introduce plans to kickstart the industry. Known as the Livestock Operation Siting and Expansion Act, LB 106 would create a new process for zoning of livestock farms. Groups like the Cattlemen and Farm Bureau have been pushing for this, and the University of Nebraska published a major report last year calling for livestock expansion.
We have the resource base here, certainly, to have a larger livestock industry even yet than we have today, both on the cow-calf side, the fed cattle side. The swine industry certainly has significant room for expansion. The dairy industry has significant room for expansion. So we think the state is prime.
The new proposal calls for the state to develop a scoring system taking into account odor, traffic, economic impact, and community support. And it would create a new state board that livestock producers could appeal to if they're denied. Cattle and hog producers in the state have complained Nebraska has a patchwork system of zoning rules that may hold back expansion, when they say the state could generate hundreds of millions of dollars by increasing livestock numbers. Record corn yields and record soybean acres. The final count for 2014 shows lots of positives for Nebraska agriculture. The final USDA numbers are out. Average corn yield was 179 bushels an acre, tying the all-time record set in 2009. Nebraska growers produced 1.6 billion bushels of corn, down slightly from the previous year. That's because fewer acres of corn were planted because of lower corn prices. Soybean acres were way up, an all-time high for the state. More than 5 million acres of soybeans were harvested in Nebraska. Sorghum production was 35%, and alfalfa jumped 41% from the year before. It was a record crop production year across the nation. The USDA's final tally shows strong numbers for corn and soybeans. Nationally, farmers harvested a record 14.2 billion bushels of corn. That comes even though farmers planted 5% fewer acres. Soybean production across the U.S. also set a new record, just shy of 4 billion bushels. A new Farm Bill safety net program attracts dairy producers. More than half of the nation's dairy producers have enrolled. The voluntary program provides financial help to participating farmers when the difference between the price of milk and feed cost falls below the coverage level selected by the farmer. Unlike earlier dairy programs, the Margin Protection Program offers dairy producers a range of choices of protection. Landowners in the path of that proposed Keystone XL pipeline met this week to talk about their options following a big Nebraska Supreme Court ruling. NTV's Megan Johnson has more.
It's more wait and see for many landowners, some of whom have been at this for years. Wait for the State Department and President to move forward, and wait for TransCanada to take their next steps.
To their land.
Attorneys for some landowners shared information about what could be coming up at a meeting in York Thursday night. Some of those with land in the oil pipeline's proposed route were unsure what last week's Nebraska Supreme Court ruling meant. 4 judges agreed with the suit, saying the law giving the governor the power to approve Keystone XL's route is unconstitutional, but it takes 5 to make that happen. And since the other 3 judges did not give an opinion at all, lawyers say property owners still have a case.
The misunderstanding is that the landowners lost, and the conclusion being that there's no further avenue, when in fact every legal argument that we put forward in 2012 is still available to be put forth next week. and that's what our clients intend to do.
In the meantime, they say people along the route should expect condemnation letters from TransCanada in the next week. It's basically the start of another paperwork process in which the company and landowners can negotiate easement agreements or get ready for more legal proceedings.
It's an opportunity for the landowners to put on evidence and explain why the easement, what the value is, why the court should consider different aspects about it, develop expert testimony, and put on their case effectively.
We have a plan in our head. We're going to be talking with our lawyers and to move forward. I do know that we're going to fight to the end.
Opponents of the pipeline say they are not expecting any legislation impacting Keystone XL to come before the unicameral during this session. For now, they'll wait to see what the president does.
I pray that Obama will deny and reject this pipeline, so that's my most important prayer right now, and we're going to continue to fight.
I did reach out to a TransCanada spokesperson to find out where they stand after this Nebraska ruling, but was unable to get a statement from them in time for this story. We'll have that as a further update as soon as it becomes available.
Soil, water, and weather. Research is helping farmers manage these things. NTV's Megan Johnson has more from a recent crop production clinic put on by Nebraska Extension.
Some of it's technology, the latest apps and websites to see climate information right from the tractor, but some of it's good old-fashioned data that may help improve Nebraska crops.
Good year for irrigating, but
They've crunched numbers and studied trends. Now extension educators like Gary Zobek are sharing last year's findings with farmers at crop production clinics.
about 4 bushels here.
Data like soybean planting populations, figures backed up now by 6 years of on-farm research.
We planted 90, 120, 150, and 180,000. If you have 120,000, by far it's going to be the most economical. We're going to get the most bang for the dollar we spend on that seed.
Researchers use test plots too, but say working with farmers to replicate studies in their fields answers the big question growers have: will that work for me?
By doing the same study with a lot of producers in a lot of different locations, we can find out if this practice is practical across the state, not just in one area.
It's similar methodology driving a cover crop study started this fall and supported by the Nebraska corn and soybean boards.
4 locations across the state with the same treatments of cropping systems and cover crops at all those locations.
Roger Elmore says they're trying to learn more about the impact of cover crops, a soil-saving technique many turned to after late summer hail tore through central Nebraska. But Elmore says there will still be more questions to answer.
Cover crops in a 3-year project like we have will probably not greatly impact the soil quality issues in terms of organic matter or anything like that, but it's a start.
Extension educators say this is the perfect time to have these clinics and discussions because they can help producers form a plan so when planting season hits, everyone is ready.
Record crops and low prices. Many farmers are embracing change in 2015. You can see that happen as they juggle what's being planted out there. Acreage shifts continue to move from corn to soybeans. Farm Futures' first survey of 2015 planting intentions showed growers ready for a massive move into soybeans, which appear to be more profitable than corn at the time. That advantage receded during the post-harvest rally, but farmers said they still want to boost their bean seedings this spring at the expense of corn. Have you ever wondered where those checkoff dollars go? They support research and market development, and recently the corn and soybean checkoffs held their first ever checkoff tour. Both the soybean and corn board collect and disperse about 1/2 cent on each bushel of products, giving producers and personnel a better understanding of how this contribution in return helps the farmers is a major priority.
Where I'm involved with the checkoff, I know what's going on. Many people only hear advertisements on the radio, so this is a way to get them more information of what the corn and soybean boards are doing.
Much of the tour was focused on how checkoff dollars are being invested in areas such as education, marketing, and research. At the end of the presentation, the floor was open to questions from area farmers. The topic of ethanol use and ways to better educate consumers and producers was also discussed.
First of all, helping the corn producers understand the value of ethanol, not only to their operations but to the state of Nebraska, and helping them understand what they can do to help promote their own products.
More tractors and fewer combines were sold last year. The Association of Equipment Manufacturers report retail sales of farm tractors across the nation up 3%. But the industry group also noted a nearly 26% drop in combine sales. In December alone, combine sales were down slightly over 40%, and tractor sales dipped about 2%. Ethanol producers may have a lean year because of the collapse of oil prices. But demand for the fuel additive will remain strong. The cheap oil will likely cut into ethanol profits because oil refiners will want to pay less for the corn-based fuel. But the industry is somewhat shielded by a federal biofuel mandate and the need to boost octane in gasoline. And how about a tax break for breweries using Nebraska crops? The new bill being proposed at the state capitol aims at boosting the market for Nebraska-grown barley and hops. The measure would apply to manufacturers if at least 10% of the crops used in brewing were grown in Nebraska. The bill says beer-related crops include barley, hops, or any other grain customarily used in the manufacture of beer. An FFA classroom launches a successful startup, receiving national recognition. Find out more in our Farm Youth of the Month, still to come. But up next, we talk about profits and fertilizer. Marilyn Barnett will explain.